Common belief amongst many people is that if only Custer had had Winchester lever-action rifles, he would never have been massacred at the last stand. You've seen the Model 1873 Springfield before. It is an improvement of Erskine Allen's trapdoor of 1866. This weapon, in carbine form, was the weapon of the 7th Cavalry. This is the 1873 Winchester. It holds 12 rounds in its tubular magazine. In order to fire, the shooter need only move the lever down and up. This extracts and ejects the old cartridge case, feeds a new cartridge into the chamber, and cocks the rifle. Let's watch the Winchester strut its stuff on the range. You saw the extreme difficulty in loading the Winchester's magazine. When you put the lever action against the clock, all of a sudden its volume of fire is not so great. Further, some of the rounds were hitting short. When you fire at the extremely high rate, which I did with the first magazine full, 12 rounds in 15 seconds, you find that you can't reacquire the sight picture because the slap of the upward motion of the lever knocks the barrel downwards. If you are to deliver accurate fire, you must take 2 or 3 seconds after the motion of the lever to reacquire your sight picture. On the chart, it looks like this. The difference in volume between the two rifles is not that great. And remember, with the trapdoor Springfield, when the range closes, his volume of fire will go up to 9 or 10. And the Winchester at 13 is going flat out constantly. What about the range? Are we cheating the Winchester? Surely it must be better than this. In fact, we're giving the Winchester the benefit of the doubt. The Model 1873 Winchester was chambered for 4 different cartridges. The most powerful of them was the 4440. That's a 200-grain 44 caliber bullet with 40 grains of black powder. Chronographed on modern instruments, it delivers just over 1,000 feet per second. This means that the Model 1873 Winchester is only slightly more powerful than the .45 automatic of today. The Winchester was about a 120-yard rifle at best. In fact, at 120 yards, the Winchester had roughly the energy of a .45 automatic at 80 yards. Why did Winchester use such weak cartridges? The Model 73 was really a very poor design. Though it looks on the outside like a nice big lever action, when you take the side plate off, you find a different story. The bolt is held forward by this toggle arrangement, and the toggle is held closed by the fingers holding the lever against the grip of the rifle. You couldn't make it for any more powerful a cartridge. When this design was scaled up in 1876, the result was still no good. The design is weak and extremely inefficient in length. It simply will not take long, powerful cartridges. Further, Mr. Winchester's production couldn't keep up with his boasts. In 1873, he produced only 126 rifles. It wasn't until the 1880s, before Oliver Winchester was capable of consistently producing these rifles in large quantity. When he did produce them, he was producing them for deer hunters, other people who were shooting at close range, and for people who wanted a rifle that fired the same cartridge as their revolver. It was not until 1886 when manufacturing capability and design caught up with desire. These came together in the 1886 Winchester. You can see the two locking lugs sliding in corresponding slots in the receiver, which lock the bolt closed. This was the first lever action that would take the large black powder cartridges that ranged out to 150 yards and beyond. By 1886, however, the buffalo were gone and the Indians largely defeated. So let us get back to the time frame at hand. Was the lever-action Winchester of 1873 totally devoid of redeeming social value? No, not exactly. In the hands of trained troops, led by men who understood the capabilities and limitations of the Winchester, and who were willing to weave that into their battle plan and their tactical organization, the Winchester might still contribute to the successful outcome of battle. A good example is the Battle of Plevna in 1877. In this battle, the Russians were charging across open ground towards Turkish entrenchments. The Turks, during the 1870s, had been on a weapons buying spree throughout the industrialized world. They had bought a large number of Mauser single shots, Remington rolling blocks, and Peabody single shots, among others. They had also bought a number of Henry and Model 1873 Winchesters. At Plevna, they equipped each and every man with a long-range single-shot breech loader and its ammunition, and with a Winchester lever action and its ammunition. As the Russians attacked, the Turks engaged them at long range and extracted heavy casualties. Only when the pitiful remnants of the Russian attack closed to within 80 yards did the officers order their men to put down the single shots and use the Winchesters, which were sitting ready with full magazines. The resulting storm of lead literally blew the Russians from the field before the magazines were empty. How about the 7th Cavalry at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876? Would Winchesters have saved them? I doubt it. The 7th Cavalry had a very high percentage of raw recruits. Discipline was quite poor, and there was little strong junior officer or NCO leadership. Custer, with his 5 troops or companies, allowed himself to be surprised by a vastly superior enemy at close range. Based on the location of the bodies, it is apparent that his companies were out of mutual supporting distance. They could not mass their fire, and Custer either made no attempt or could not make any attempt to do any better. The Indians were at close range when the contact started, and they literally stormed over the troopers. I should point out that based on the evidence of weapons confiscation from the Indians in the period 1876 to 1892, we can assume that of the Indians that attacked Custer, only 1 in 3 had a firearm, and of that 1 in 3, fewer than 1 of 3 again, 1 of 3 again, had any sort of breech loader or repeater whatsoever. Out of those weapons, you could expect a further 20 to 25% that would not work due to lack of spare parts or ammunition. Custer engaged a numerically superior enemy under conditions that suited the enemy's weapons, mostly bow and arrow and shock weapons, and his numbers. No other weapon in existence at that time could have saved Custer. How about the other portion of Custer's command, Reno and Benteen? They paid a heavy price in close-range engagements with the Indians as they retreated to the top of the hill. Once there, they slew their horses and commenced to dig in. From that position, the long-range fire from their 45-70s kept the Indians at bay and repulsed 3 determined assaults. These troops did have trouble with extraction and ejection of cartridge cases from their 45-70 trapdoor carbines. However, the reason was that they carried their cartridges in leather loop cartridge belts. Tanning acids from leather quickly corrode the copper in the brass cartridge case, forming a green verdigris. When you fire a cartridge with this verdigris on it, it will expand in the chamber and literally weld itself within the chamber. Standard procedure at the time was to take the cartridges from the belt daily, clean, and oil them. This was simply not done in the 7th Cavalry. Do not think that this is a problem only in the 1870s. In the 1930s through 1950s, more than a few police officers were slain for the very same reason. If you look at Winchester and Remington advertisements of the 1950s, you will find that they advertise police ammunition in .38 Special, where the cartridge cases are plated with nickel so that this verdigris will not form. Back to Reno and Benteen. As the days wore on before Reno's and Benteen's relief, the Indians stopped charging and engaged in a long-range gunnery duel. A few men amongst the cavalry, Captain French being one of them, had brought the long-barreled infantry rifle with its more powerful ammunition. One member of the command, First Sergeant Ryan, had brought his privately owned long-range Sharps Buffalo rifle. It was these few men who finally drove the Indians completely out of range by virtue of gunfire alone. Myths, I suppose, die hard. Custer's defeat had nothing to do with his weapons. It was due to his cornucopia of other errors. The weapons of the cavalry did not suffer that great a disadvantage in overall volume of fire, and certainly had the combat range to make up for it. Custer simply never used them properly.